of the Enthuse Foundation, and my partner, Christy Snyder, is here also. So welcome to her and welcome to all of you for joining this webinar. I wanted to start and kick it off with what is the Enthuse Foundation and why do we exist before we get to the meat of this webinar. I know you're all here to hear from the wonderful presenters we have today from Whole Foods. We're really excited for the content that they're going to share with you all. But I wanted to take a little bit of this time to kick it off with why the Enthuse Foundation exists and what we do at the foundation. So with that, in 2018, my business partner in the marketing agency world, Christy also, we were ideating around what is it that we could do as women entrepreneurs to give back to a community, to share our learnings and to understand and help other women founders. And when we did our research, as a good marketing agency would, we found that less than it's really less than 3%, it's 2.7% of VC funding went into women-owned businesses. We wanted to change that number by providing information, providing resources, and really using our voice as marketers to help bring awareness to that, but also to help women founders. Women founders specifically in the CPG space, that was our experience, that was our background. So we started a nonprofit in 2018, and we had really three pillars of our work that we were doing. But as it stands today, we have over 7,000 community members since 2018. We have been doing 300 hours of educational content. That's the mentoring and the support we give women founders. And we've awarded over 300,000 in grants and programs, direct funding into women-owned businesses. And, the what we do and how that comes to life is to really focus on these three pillars. The first one, community, that's the big number I shared about the community members of the 7,000, but doing that through what we call quiet impact, through in-person virtual events like this, events in market where we have sponsors come in and help us do events and pop-ups, if you will, to meet founders and share business advice. And then bring in investors to these meetings, showcase how we can meet up and have investors see these wonderful businesses. Education is the second pillar. Developing content and webinars and blog posts and videos that address relevant issues that are facing women entrepreneurs and putting that content on our website, which is theenthusefoundation.org. And most importantly, bringing capital to the game. We do that through many, many ways. We have grants, we have our pitch competition, and this year alone, we have more than $100,000 going to women founders through our annual events. And a big announcement that I'm here to share with you all today is we have a special grant that is kicking off on Monday. So if you can think about Monday or schedule it, bookmark it in your calendar, we have something really exciting launching on theenthusefoundation.org. We are launching our biggest grant ever. This grant is in partnership with Spearhead Global, which is also a women-owned company, and they're a leader in the packaging solutions realm. And the name of this grant is called Capital and Catalyst, and it's for $40,000. I did not miss there, $40,000 in cash, along with mentorship from Spearhead or packaging support for a woman-owned business in the food and beverage business. Applications will go live on Monday, June 23rd, so please go to theenthusefoundation.org for more details and the link for the application. So exciting, such good news, and what a great way to kick off this webinar. I'm going to pass it over to our Senior Manager of Programming, which is Rachel Robbins. Many of you may know her, and she will talk to you about today's session. So thank you and welcome to this session.
Thank you so much, Kim, and thank you, Christy, as well. So we are super excited for today's conversation. It was extremely popular, and just a quick overview of the agenda. Kim introduced you all to the Enthuse Foundation. I am going to introduce our panelists momentarily. We're going to have a moderated Q&A. I have some questions that you all submitted, and then we'll turn it around to you at about 4:40, 3:40, 2:40, wherever you are, about 20 minutes before the top of the hour. We'll turn it over to you. So have your questions ready. I'm going to turn it over to Caroline. Before I do, one second. Caroline, my colleague Ann and I met with Caroline in Austin at the end of April, and she was telling us a little bit about Whole Foods and what she does. And she mentioned this idea of breaking bread. And hopefully she'll get into it and describe when Whole Foods opens a new store that they break bread. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a beautiful concept that was really the idea of what this name of this webinar is. This idea of breaking bread and just getting to know some of the people at Whole Foods behind the scenes, the founders that are there as well. So Caroline, thank you so much for supporting this webinar, getting it all together. And look, we're here, we're making it happen. So turning it over to you. And there will be a quick, we want to get to know who's on the call. So there'll be a quick survey. If you can participate, that would be great as I turn it on to Caroline.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you to the Enthuse Foundation. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here and connect with your community. So I'm Caroline Freedman. I am the Principal Program Manager of a program here at Whole Foods called the WFM Lending Program, and I look forward to telling you a bit more about that as we get into the discussion. Just by way of introduction, as far as my background, I started my career in tech, but was daydreaming about becoming an entrepreneur for my 10 years that I was there. And so I finally had my brainwave and developed a organic baby food company called Nurture Me that I then ran for about a decade. And one of our first accounts was Whole Foods. So that experience then led to the opportunity to work for Whole Foods, where I've been for the past 3 years. I'm based here in Austin, as Rachel said. And just to give kind of a quick overview of the lending program, this is something that's been in place here for about 20 years. And the original impetus for the program was for Whole Foods to really make capital investments in some of our supplier partners and to help them grow and scale with us. And the program, in the 20 years that it has existed, has really grown, and we've been able to, there's a lot of versatility to it. So we've been able to leverage the program in different ways. But the main qualifying criteria for loan recipients is that they're an existing supplier partner of ours, that they do have a growth trajectory with us at Whole Foods, either in the form of getting into more doors or developing additional products that can get into our shelves. Mission alignment is increasingly important, meaning companies that go beyond just producing great products, and they do support Whole Foods' mission of nourishing people and the planet. And then also that you have the support of your Whole Foods buying team, which we call them the merchants here at Whole Foods. So that's the gist of the lending program. Look forward to telling you more about it. And I will hand it over to Kelly. Is it you next?
It is Kelly. And while Kelly Landrieu, just to give everybody a sense of who's in the audience, we have 63% that are full-time in their CPG business, with a few that haven't gotten started but have an idea, some that are working on their business as a side hustle. And then we have people that are just interested in learning more. Most of the audience, they are not at Whole Foods. We have a few that are, and a majority of them are interested in getting their products at Whole Foods. And a majority of them, we have 1/4 that have fundraised, and then 65% that have not, and 10% that it's not applicable. So Kelly, passing it along to you now that we know who's tuning in.
Awesome. I love that poll. It's so helpful to know who's in the audience, what you're expecting to hear. I've done a lot of these speaking engagements over the years, and this is probably my favorite way to start. Anyway, my name is Kelly Landrieu, and I lead the Whole Foods Market Accelerator initiative. Specifically, we call it LEAP, or Local and Emerging Accelerator Program. I've been with Whole Foods for about 13 years, actually 13 years yesterday, now that I look at the date. I was hired in as a Whole Foods Market forager in the Southwest region, covering Louisiana. And over the years, I just sort of expanded and changed a few roles and landed here. And now I lead our accelerator initiatives. I am based here in Austin, just like Caroline, but I claim New Orleans as home, just like anyone who was born in New Orleans. Anyway, I would like to tell you a little bit about the Whole Foods Market LEAP program. So our purpose is to foster the development of growth of early stage and emerging high potential and high innovation brands. What does that look like? Those are brands specifically in the grocery, dairy, frozen, body care supplements space. We do 2 cohorts a year. Early growth, which we're about to interview for our cohort. Those are brands that are brand new to Whole Foods Market, relatively early in their retail journey, have an innovative product, something that's not already on the shelf, something that will bring new customers into the category is really where that's the sweet spot I'm looking for. So high innovation, high growth potential. And you will meet one of those brands from our cohort last year later. The second cohort we do is on the verge. This is for current Whole Foods Market suppliers that are selling in up to 120-ish stores-ish. And same categories, same departments. We're looking for brands, basically almost the same exact thing as early growth, but these brands have a little bit of a track record. We're able to see their growth potential. It's very similar to the requirements for LPLP. The only thing is we're only allowed to pick 10 each year for each cohort. So it's a small group, but one of my favorite things about LEAP is that we really treat it as a lab. So we are taking learnings that we have in both of those cohorts and figuring out how we can apply them across the board for our supplier partners. So yeah, I think that's it. I will pass it off next. I believe it's Kristen.
Here is Kristen Sherman.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Kristen Sherman. I am a category merchant on the global merchant team and under center store merchandising, currently covering the bread desk under frozen, so ambient bread, frozen bread, and flatbreads categories. Been in grocery retail, I can honestly say, the majority of my life, and grew up in it, originally from Iowa. Currently living in Austin. Home is very relative to me, and Texas is my 5th state with Whole Foods Market. I think I might have a month on Kelly. I started in May of 2012 with Whole Foods, and also came from the local and emerging brands team. I returned from maternity leave in January in this current role. So about 5.5 months in, and a new mom, so, and a human, just all the things that I would love to just connect with looking forward to connect with everybody in this group today. And some of the takeaways that I'll be emphasizing from my perspective is just in my career, having worked with brands, early stage, local and emerging, and now through national distribution, multi-million-dollar brands, just, kind of that life cycle, that path, building the relationships and connections with the right folks, getting to know your buyer and your customer. I've also done a good number of these sorts of panel discussions and talk a lot about selling in versus selling through. So, not only getting on shelf at your ideal retailer, but staying on shelf, staying relevant, utilizing the tools in your toolkit, and leaning on others to help strengthen your brand where you need it, because founders wear a lot of hats, and it's great to know your strengths and opportunities and build your village. So looking forward to the discussion. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kristen. And we are going to turn it over to Dara Erck, who is the founder and CEO of SAM+LEO, who is an entrepreneur, and she has been able to take advantage of both the LEAP program and is a loan recipient from the lending program. So wanted to get Dara's perspective as well.
Yeah, thank you so much to the Enthuse Foundation and of course Whole Foods Market for having me. So I am the founder of SAM+LEO. We are a teen mental health brand with a line of gummy supplements. So I joke that no 11-year-old needs a Monster or Red Bull, and so we really are in a space to serve our kids and teens. If you walk down any vitamin aisle, there are kids and there are adults, but not a lot of teen options. So that's where we come in. My background, though, has been mostly in global health with the foundation formerly known as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and working in the global health space. But I'm really passionate about teen mental health, mostly from my own journey with my own kids, but also just seeing what's been happening with teens post-pandemic, especially. And so the product serves both functions as both a solution and a tool to start talking about teen mental health. We support nonprofits in mental health, and then also our packaging is environmentally friendly. And like Rachel mentioned, I am in the last LEAP cohort from the 2024 program, and also recipient of a loan from the Whole Foods Market Lending Program. I also won a pitch competition in Startup Colorado, and I'm bootstrapping the business as a single mom. So happy to talk about all things in that space, and also just that journey to get on the shelf. And like the other three Whole Foods Market people have said about innovation and where we fit on the shelf, but really just looking at how we can serve shoppers and parents and families, both from an authentic place and supporting our families, and also a really good tasting product. So something that really tastes good and that I would want to give my own kids. So looking forward to the questions and conversation.
You're muted,
You're
Rachel.
muted.
Of course, my doorbell rings and hasn't rung all day. Thank you all. That's all I was trying to say. Thank you all so much for being here and taking time out of your busy days. So what we're going to do is, as I mentioned earlier, you all submitted some questions. There were some themes that came up that we'll address first, and then we'll turn it over to you for everybody's questions for our panel. So just to keep me honest, here are some of the topics. I know it feels like a lot, but we're going to get started with very simply. And Kristen, I'm going to start with you, and then Caroline and Kelly, feel free to chime in. How do you get into Whole Foods? Like, what is that process like? Buyers, regional, national? You know, if I have a product, we saw that more than 80% of brands here want to get into Whole Foods. How does that work?
That is a wonderful place to start, Rachel. And so the short answer is do your homework. We've got on WholeFoodsMarket.com. I just put a link in the chat, but I don't think it's going through. I might try to send it to Rachel directly to share out in the chat. But information for potential suppliers, which links directly to our Whole Foods Market supplier portal. And that is your first and one-stop shop, whether you're a potential supplier or existing partner, to get the latest information on category reviews. We have a category review calendar, much like many other national retailers, where categories have a designated time or maybe multiple events per year where they're reviewed, taking submissions, looking at the current assortment, looking at opportunities, and we have a task list posted on what is needed, when it's needed, and how to get it submitted. That is the best way to get the information on getting your product in front of the right person at the right time. And so my team with, respective across center store merchandising, which is all grocery, most like the majority of CPG packaged goods and whole body, so supplements as well, run off of these calendars. And whether you're aiming for national or smaller, maybe metro or state or regional distribution, I work closely with Kelly's team to navigate, kind of a mutual review of where the best place to start is in terms of doors or distribution, and looking at submissions through that calendar process. Kelly, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So a question I get often about submitting your product for review at Whole Foods Market is, do you have to launch in all stores at once? And that's what we're here to tell you. No, you absolutely don't. In fact, if you're a small brand, chances are you're not going to launch in all stores at once. We're not even going to approach that just because we know how expensive CPG is, and we want you to be successful in the long term. So the way we'll often do it is that we'll start off brands in what we call a metro area or a state, or even usually it's actually become more and more often an entire geographic regional area. That process, I think this is a really important point, especially for early stage brands. The process takes, Kristen, correct me, I'm going to say 10 months, but I don't think it's actually 10 months. It might be 8 months now.
Yes, I'm kicking off round 5, so May 2026 right now. So it's pushing a year, but a lot of what I'm doing now is more internal, like insights review and things. I think the submission deadline is September. So I think you're right, about 8 months from submission deadline to in-store execution.
Yeah. So one thing to note is that the path to market, the path to shelf is the same regardless of if you are small or large. It is that category review calendar. That's how we are able to look at all products at the same time. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. You're always welcome, and I highly suggest this, in fact, connect, look for Whole Foods Market Foragers on LinkedIn and connect with them. Say hi if you're you're so want to, but the more you can educate yourself, right, the better. So I'm going to stop there.
Caroline,
a couple of questions.
Yeah. Sorry.
In the chat, I don't know if Rachel, if you want me to address these questions now or wait for later, they're kind of relevant.
Yeah, if you feel like there's one that you can address right now, absolutely. If not, we'll get to it during Q&A.
Yeah, great. So Sonia is on Growing to Another Region. Hey, Sonia, nice to see you. Familiar face and name at least. We look a lot between the local and emerging brands team and the global category merchant team, looking at velocities, so units per store per week, brands that are over or under indexing within their respective space, looking at meeting with the brands, what's their capacity, what's their distribution plans, funding, production capabilities, so many different things. It's usually, we'll start with those velocities, like this brand is really taking off and over indexing within their category, and then have the conversation to see, are they poised, are they ready for growth, what's the plan and the path, and is it supported by the merchant team or those new areas, what are the competing items they'd be running into, the competitive landscape. So it's a pretty, holistic view of mutual conversation of determining whether a brand is ready to grow. And then to Marcia's point too, range meat is, I would say loosely utilized sometimes as like a discovery tool. Your best if you're going to prioritize any actions, submit all your proposals in the supplier portal.
Awesome.
And
I
I
do.
add to Kristen's comments regarding growth beyond one region into multiple regions, or if you're considering going from being a smaller forager brand into being a potentially national one, that's when my program comes into play. The lending program is in partnership with your merchant, your buyer. When a decision is made to take you from one region into multiple ones, when you are getting additional points of distribution, that's a great use case for a loan. And so a lot of times when your buyer, that's essentially how the deal flow comes to me, is when a Kristen or a Kelly or someone is working with a brand and wanting to expand them, and they say to me, I love this founder, I love the company, I love what it stands for, it's very mission aligned, I think they would make a great loan candidate, then we can provide that debt financing to help you scale. And the most common use of funds is building inventory for that expansion, or if you're manufacturing your own products and you need to buy a piece of equipment, for example, that's the second use case, would be CapEx, capital expenditures like that. So just wanted to make people aware. I know there's a small subset of the attendees on this call right now that are existing Whole Foods suppliers, but assuming that you become one in the future and then you have the opportunity to grow, we want to make people aware of this tool and this program, because it really can help you in your growth journey at Whole Foods.
Thank you, Caroline. I think that we're going to take audience Q&A towards the end, just because I want to maximize making sure that we cover some of the points that we had earlier. Dara, how did you come to Whole Foods? How did you get involved in both programs? And tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm one of the newer brands. My product actually just launched last year, and most of my sales were Amazon. I wasn't quite looking at retail yet, or looking for the right retail partner, but knew that I had interest from submitting, like a lot of brands do, to range me, and I was getting selected for a lot of innovation things. And then when I saw the LEAP program and applied, and got through kind of the process of semifinalists and finalists and sending in samples and going through that process, realized that that was the right path for me and the right alignment. So I had no other retail lined up. I was kind of focused on D2C and my Amazon business and proof of concept, and that went kind of quickly for me. And then I think through the LEAP program and my understanding of our cohort and what they're really looking for, I was probably at that right sweet spot where I had some product validation, and I wasn't really starting out. It wasn't my first sale, but I wasn't so far along in the process where I didn't really need the Whole Foods support to get on the shelf. So there is this kind of like nice middle ground where you need a little bit more support than other brands. And then, like, as the other people said, kind of the mission alignment, something new, innovative in the category. So that's where that alignment with Whole Foods Market has happened. I think, my understanding with other brands, every journey is different, right? And so whether you're meeting and following up in LinkedIn or sending product in for samples and testing, it's kind of the network and communication and people just getting familiar with your brand is probably the most important in that. And how you're able to tell your brand story, I think goes a long way, and not just letting hope and a prayer, right? Not just sending it in or not just submitting, but the follow-up and the relationship building is really important.
Awesome. So just also taking some of the questions that have been in the chat and were submitted before, talk a little bit about certifications. I know that, and Kelly, you've been doing an awesome job just answering the Q&A. I may have you, help me on all of our webinars that we did, tackling the Q&A. And so you mentioned in there some of the reasons potentially somebody does not get accepted into the LEAP program. I know that Whole Foods has some certification requirements. Talk a little bit about that, and also as far as how merging of a brand does Whole Foods look for? Like, if I'm just starting out and I'm not in any retailers, am I a good fit? So let's get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts there.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about, first I'll address the question around why brands may not be moved forward in the process. And then I will sort of talk overall around how emerging. I like the way you put that a lot. I want to address this part about Leap specifically because we get thousands of applications and we can select 10 brands. And I see everything in there from just an idea, literally someone who doesn't have, a design for package or anything like that, all the way to brands that are way too big. Like we're talking in national retail, distributed into thousands of doors, brands that just wouldn't fit the cohort. But in between that, we see a lot of brands that may not either meet our quality standards or may not be entirely retail ready. So it's like, I like to think of it as like you get one chance on the shelf. We want to put you on the shelf when you're ready to be on the shelf. And if I look at your product and your application and I see that it's going to take more work than we can and more support than we can provide, we won't move you forward in the process. That said, we do keep all of the applications. Other reasons why, you're in a really crowded category where there's already product like what you sell, and that's not what we're looking to bring into our cohorts. What we're looking to bring into our cohorts, I cannot stress this enough, unique, innovative, something different. And you have to be able to tell me why it's different. Tell us why it's different, it's special, who your customer is, why your customer is gonna shop at Whole Foods Market to buy this product. Because at the end of the day, we want you on the shelf, right? We want you to be successful. Those are sort of some of the really overarching ones. And sometimes it's just that, another 50 brands had a better product and that was a better fit for Whole Foods Market right now. I don't want people to get discouraged, but I do want you to take any sort of rejection from an accelerator or a retailer or any type of thing and look at your product and your brand critically and say, how can I be better? And take it as a stepping off point. There are programs out there like especially food associations Maker Prep program, which is an incredible 6-month program. It's not a huge cost, but it does cost something because you have to have some skin in the game. But they take you from every piece of product development, from ideation, packaging, branding. They have a lot of experts that come in and teach courses. So check that out, Specialty Food Association Maker Prep. The other piece about emerging, like what degree of emerging do we look for? Right now, and this has evolved for me over the past 13 years that I've been working in this space. Because I used to love to find a brand that was like brand new and like help them along the journey. The reality is it has gotten more and more complicated to do that, and that's not the best use of our time. So I'm looking for brands that are out there that are not necessarily that are retail ready, but not necessarily widely distributed. Although if you are widely distributed, still apply or still submit for review. And we're looking for brands that are that have really built their network. I feel like the knowledge that you have to come to the table and be successful, our foragers can help you in some ways, but first and foremost, you need to be able to help find your own answers too. So that supplier portal that Kristen referred to earlier, you can go on there and there should be a link, although I'm not sure if it's there right now. It was broken last time I checked and they were working on fixing it. But we have a supplier toolkit, one for current suppliers and one for prospective suppliers. And I can share that with you, Rachel, if you want to share it with everybody, rather than making everybody go search for it. Yeah, but anyway, long answer. I think I got all the points.
So I have a few follow-up questions to that. And knowing the volume of applications, I can only imagine. I mean, for our pitch competition, we get 300, and I'm sure like thousands for you, Kelly, and also Kristen as well. Do you guys accept product samples? Like, Kelly, if I'm applying to the LEAP program, are you expecting me to send my sample as well, or is I'm just describing to you how amazing it is? And then my first question. My second question, maybe Caroline, you can help me out with it as well. Kelly mentioned being retail ready, and a lot of that comes with funding. And I know that for the lending program, it just applies to those that are already in Whole Foods. What recommendations or resources would you recommend for somebody who can be retail ready if they only have the funds in hand? So I know that those are two large questions thrown out there.
Yeah. So there is a roadmap of a process. When you apply to LEAP, it's a 65 question application, and I
Wow.
truly appreciate everyone who takes the time to fill that out. That gives us every bit of information we need to determine if you could potentially be a good fit. And it includes you sending in a product, like a product slide or a slide with your products on it, your ingredients, all of that stuff. From there, because we don't want everybody to send in samples, we don't want someone to take on that expense if they don't really have a chance. So we request samples in a few different stages. One of them, the foragers look at it. One of them, merchants like Kristen look at the products. And then finally, when we get to the interview stage, we have the brand send in those samples. But yeah, it's a long process. It's like our application's opened in January, and we are just now getting through. And we're doing outreach this week for next steps.
Kristen, anything to add before I speak to the financing question?
No, I think Kelly pretty much nailed it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, to answer Rachel's question, and I want to make sure you can hear me okay. I think there were some volume issues previously. The types of financing available to early stage companies are in the form of either debt or equity, and this might be something that your audience is familiar with, but debt financing is generally hard to get if you are not yet a profitable business. So for early stage CPG businesses, debt is more difficult to come by, which again is why I think the Whole Foods loan program is a really favorable one, because you're not having to give up equity or give up ownership in your company in order to have this pathway to growth. But if you're not yet a supplier and you're still in need of capital and you're needing to, buy inventory or purchase equipment or whatever it is, the other source of financing available to you would be equity, would be, the fundraising process where you go out, for example, and you say, I want to raise an initial seed round of maybe $500,000 or maybe $1 million. And I think what's most common for early stage CPG brands, where they would source that capital from, is either friends and family, and you treat it, formally. You put together a pitch deck, you get your legal documents together. It's not an informal process to do a friends and family round. But then the other thing I would encourage people to do is within their local network or within their local area is to identify angel investor groups. That's kind of an initial stage of equity financing that can get you sort of over the initial hump and get you onto shelves and help provide some of that initial capital that you might be needing. And that's going to be in the form of $25,000 check from one angel and a $50,000 check from another. And you sort of cobble together a round of a few $100,000 to get started. I think that's the most common approach that early stage CPG companies are taking if debt financing is not available to them.
And it's hard to believe we're almost at audience questions. Before I turn it over to the audience, Dara, I would love to hear from you. You mentioned that you are bootstrapping your business, and so you're in retail. How were you able to get that capital together prior to the loan?
Yeah. So it's different for everyone. I think I'm in a unique situation, and it's that the co-manufacturer that I'm working with will do really small minimum orders, so they don't have a huge outlay. And so that's where these relationships come in, is finding your partnerships. If you're making it yourself in a kitchen, or how much packaging you have to buy, and just really be mindful of your costs. So I feel like I'm lucky that I didn't have to buy this huge amount of inventory to have on hand. So that's the hugest driver for me. And then I have it's me, myself, and I. Like, we at Sam+LEO, the team is really lean. I have some social media support, a bookkeeper, and I just use really nimble resources as needed for legal or bookkeeping. Asking the network or finding other startup groups. I think there's a lot of online startup programs, startup CPG. There's a lot of places where you can find support that's reasonable, and making like really conscious decisions about how you spend your money. You can't go big. You can't have big marketing dollars. You just have to be a little bit more scrappy with it all. Or you go to trade shows and work a trade show booth for a friend, and then walk around with your samples. Just as many ways as you can, until you're really ready, that you're like, I'm confident that my product's going to work, or I'm confident that I'm ready for the next stage. And so having that ready to go. And then I would just say, having a financial model or planning and forecasting kind of always in the back of your mind, like, you're here, but what's that next step? And always planning for that next step so you know what's needed. And then I think going in, the difference between online and retail is the big leap. And so knowing it's called LEAP program for a reason, but also it's knowing what's involved with that, because I had to educate myself too. It was going to be required to not just get on the shelf like everyone says, but to be successful on the shelf is very different than an online D2C business. And so I think it's just really being mindful of where you can spend your money and where you need to spend your money.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So turning it over to the audience, and we already have some questions, as Kelly knows, as she's rapidly responding, and Kristen's joining in on the party too. So thank you both. For niche, so audience members, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat to hosts and panelists. You can also use the Q&A function. As soon as I ask my first question, I'm going to launch a brief survey just to give us an idea of how things are going so far. So the first question that I saw was from Andrea. Can you share more about the info of how you evaluate velocities for smaller brands that maybe are not in large retailers yet?
Kristen, do you want to take that one, or you want me to speak to it?
Yeah, I was unmuting. I can take that one. So I'm actually deep in this right now for my ambient and frozen bread categories, actually for around 12 resets later this year. And it's all pretty relative. There's a lot of things that I look at when I kind of slice and dice a category based on the number of doors. I look at, like I mentioned earlier, the units per store per week, where the product is sold. So a brand in 5 stores is equally measured against a brand in 500 stores. And from there, I kind of slice by need state. So is it a special diet product? Is it a certain form factor? So again, I'm going to use bread a lot in my examples, but is it, I'm not going to compare a rosemary Parmesan loaf to a brioche hamburger bun. From there, I kind of look in terms of, what are the kind of average velocities for that product type, and then kind of establish like a cut line or a goal. Are you over or under? To determine the index from there. And I typically have, I might, as I'm reviewing, might see some outliers and try to have a conversation with the brands, checking in to make sure that they're leveraging, if they are under indexing, that they're leveraging resources to drive velocities. And that's where that piece of getting on shelf versus staying on shelf comes into play, because you really need to stay engaged. A lot of folks come to Whole Foods Market or any retailer and get that yes, and then they check the box and move on. It's really important to build that relationship with your customer, with your buyer, with your brokers, whoever it might be that you're leveraging to stay on shelf and know your tools with driving, being active with promotions and in-store demos and leveraging any digital marketing, finding the right strategy and mix of, finite funds and resources can be the trickiest part, but we've got a lot of folks here to support in that. So building relationships is a big one.
Kristen, I think you hit the nail on the head with that final piece. As you were talking, I was thinking the number one piece of advice I give to brands that want to be in Whole Foods Market is leverage your network, build those relationships, go to the trade shows if you can at all make it, meet people, join industry groups. The more visible you are as a founder, the more visible your product's going to be, more likely someone like Kristen is going to see it. So.
Absolutely.
So there have been a few questions about distributors and about working with others. Specifically, Unify has come up in the chat and in the Q&A. Do brands need to work with Unify to be on Whole Foods radar? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Unify is our primary national distribution partner, third party, but we do have a lot of brands self-distributing or working with secondary partners like Rainforest on the East Coast. Other examples. Totally blanking.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Wisha. So yes, it depends. It does get a little tricky based on your category. If you have a frozen product, for instance, that does, make it harder. Glass, liquid and glass bottles is very expensive to ship. But we do have folks that use FedEx and UPS too. Pod Foods, I see. Yes, I don't think that that's been established yet as a third party distributor, but I know that there's a relationship there.
Yeah, I think we're working on it. It's so funny because I have been so hyper focused on early growth applications that I haven't been paying attention to everything else around me. But an important point though is no, you do not need to be in UNFI before we'll look at you. No, you do not even need to have a distributor before we'll look at you. If we decide we want your product in the stores, we'll help you figure out the distributor, right? And the right one for you. If you're looking to grow national though, one thing that I always tell people is that you're eventually going to have to be in UNFI unless there's another national option. And sometimes it's good to get in UNFI when you're a little bit smaller if you can leverage that Up Next program, which is their program specifically for small brands.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm self-distributing.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And so how did you, because Kelly talks about the importance of relationships. How did you build those relationships as you're self-distributing? What was your strategy? Were you just, sending cold LinkedIn requests?
Oh, I'm only launching in Whole Foods. So that's my only retail door right now, very manageable growth process. And I'm, as everyone said, at some point I will need a distributor, but if you're already set up, I'm already shipping to Amazon, right? My process is already set up and established, so that's working. So it's a tested method. So they're willing to work with you on that. So I think what you've heard from everyone is correct, just depending on where you're at in your process and the model. Yeah.
So curious, from Caroline, Kristen, and Kelly, and we have in full transparency a relationship with Amazon. Do you guys look at the small business categories on Amazon as you guys are looking for these, or does the foragers look at Amazon as some of these small business to look at trends, or not really?
That's evolving. I will say, for example, I'm developing a relationship with I wouldn't call them my counterparts at Amazon because it's two very different businesses, right? Think infinite shelf, think limited shelf, just, think shipping versus in person. But as we sort of get more like further into this world where we, you know, we've been acquired by Amazon, we're realizing that there are some opportunities there. Some foragers may get on Amazon and kind of dig into the small business side of it, but they also look on Instagram and they also look on LinkedIn, and they're also reading trade articles, and they're also watching what Startup CPG sends out or Naturally Network sends out. That's why I keep saying, like, engage in those networks, because that's how you're going to be visible.
So I want to be mindful of the questions, and please, the survey's still up, so take a look at the survey as well. This is a fun one. I always feel like I'm bugging buyers. I know you get so much communication. Can you give some, which is, Rachel, that's very, very sweet and very thoughtful. Can you give some tips on your favorite ways that founders can communicate with you?
I can take this one. So I want to circle back to my intro comments about being a human. I think that's one good takeaway, and what's something that I love bringing to these kinds of conversations is reminding that buyers are people, and there is a human on the other side of that email. I read everything that comes my way. It's just the how I process information and clean my inbox. And I think, don't be discouraged if you don't get a response right away. You are being seen. I would say if you're, if the question is asked and answered, maybe don't ask it again, or just, keep going back. Just being mindful and respectful. And I love leaning on brands and brokers and merchandisers to be experts in their field. So I think that's what gets my attention the most too, is like, you tell me what is trending in this category, or how your brand is performing in rest of market, or maybe Whole Foods Market, we don't have the right assortment on shelf because we've got these 2 items that are performing better outside of Whole Foods stores. Those are the things that I would love to hear from founders and around things like that. And again, back to the trends of I wish I had a crystal ball that I could rely on, but those are things that I definitely love to hear from brands. And then I guess one more little point to that too is being resourceful. If the answer is out there, maybe try to find it before asking your buyer.
One quick, as you're saying, Kristen, being resourceful, and I think that there's a lot of focus on buyers and not necessarily, Daria, I'm not going to call, say everybody should reach out to you, but one of the things that Caroline took me on a tour of the Stuytown Whole Foods that just opened in New York City. One of the things, Caroline, that you mentioned was looking for the local the local sign, seeing made in New York, made in your area. Even if you go to your local Whole Foods and you see a brand, made in Colorado, doing a LinkedIn, Google, seeing if you could reach out to that person, understanding how they got into Whole Foods. I guarantee you they have less people going into their messages than the buyers themselves, and then understanding their process and maybe making that connection. Just another way of thinking about it. So a few more, maybe we have time for 2 more questions. There are quite a few questions about non-food and beverage categories. We have somebody, toilet paper, decor, drinkware. Can we talk a little bit about the steps for those that are maybe not food, the types of certification, the process for those non-food and beverage brands to get into Whole Foods?
It's all through the category review, same thing. And if you go onto the supplier portal, you look for quality standards, you'll see what's required. Certifications aren't really required so much, but think about what makes your product as marketable as possible. Think about what customers are looking for, because at the end of the day, that's what merchants want, or what the customers are looking for.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that is very category or product specific too. So, something on my desk I'm looking at is regenerative agriculture, and ingredient sourcing definitely matters. Minimizing food waste matters, those kinds of things, especially, when you're looking at brands and a retailer that are mission aligned. Whole Foods Market's kind of been a trailblazer in a lot of these areas. So, but I put a comment, there was a Q&A answer about organic certification, just being mindful of the customer importance and relevance for the category. An organic condiment might not be, worth the expense and time and investment to get certified over a granola or something where that might have some more agricultural ingredients in it.
I would also add that my product is vegan and made with a lot of organic ingredients, and that doesn't stop it from resonating with the customer and buyer. And those certifications are really expensive as a startup, right? And so I know I'll get there, and I know the customer sees it, and I can tell that story in a lot of other places. And I think on the shelf as well, but I don't think the certifications necessarily need you to stop you from developing a quality product.
So last question, and I appreciate again all of your time, is if I'm a brand, I've already gotten into Whole Foods, yay. What resources and support does Whole Foods provides to make sure that I stay on the shelves as far as signage, tastings, and also how do I budget? Any recommendations for budgeting? And maybe that's too much of a question for 30 seconds, but that is the question I'm throwing out there.
I think a lot of it is founder or supplier driven. I would say promotions or sales is a very compelling lever, especially as you're new, and getting that yellow sale tag is a great way for a customer to find your product and try it. And in-store demos, I think, again, between the two, might vary by category, if you want to lean in one versus the other. But like me personally as a customer, if I'm in a store and I try something that I love, I'm going to shop for it. I might not even find it or see it if I'm just looking at a set, or I'm like going off of my list and checking my list off, right? So I think they both play really well together. But yeah, depending on the category, having a really strong promotional and demo strategy is key.
And it's like having a strategy and sticking to it and measuring it is really important. But Rachel, to your point of like what we provide, and it varies, right, from category to category, because it depends on what we can do in the store. But occasionally we do like these quarterly off shelves for local and emerging brands, right? Sometimes there's something called discovery, or I'm not even sure what we're calling it anymore, but it's like the what's hot now or like what's new type signs. But you can't depend on that as a founder because not everybody gets it. And it's really driven by what our customers are looking for in that moment. And so I think to Kristen's point, you have to take your fate in your own hands, right? At the end of the day, this is your business. You need to make the decisions for your business that are the best for your business. And that might be being on Whole Foods Market shelves. That might be being on different retailer shelves. Might be starting out as DTC and slowly making your way into retail from there. But you have to own your fate yourself. So.
Awesome. We're at time. Final thoughts. Caroline, Kristen, Dara, Kelly, final thoughts.
Build your network.
Yeah.
Build your network.
That's a good one. It was hard to follow Kelly's Own Your Fate. I think that was
Sorry,
taking ownership.
my
That's
soapbox.
a great mic drop. Yeah.
I would say the perseverance and purpose, like just believe in it for yourself and that grit part of it, because you could give up any day. Any day is easy to give up, but just keep going and know that you have a community around you. Reach out and you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, and when Dara said the word purpose, that really resonated for me. I do think like having a very clear why and communicating that to your end user and then communicating that also to your retail partners is always a winning strategy.
Thank you
I
all.
think
Yeah.
iterate would be one for me too. Is yeah, I think you don't be afraid to try things and fail, and then try something else.
Well, thank you all so much for your time. Thank you, Caroline, Kristen, Dara, and Kelly. We really appreciate it. Thank you everybody for attending. We will be sharing the recording. Kelly, if you want to pass along that resource that you mentioned, and I can send it in the email. And as Kim mentioned, we have a very exciting grant that's opening on Monday, and that we will absolutely share. Kim, any last words, closing thoughts?
No, it was great. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and sharing with our community. Appreciate everyone joining us.
Thank you all, and thank you, Chrissy, as well, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, y'all.
Rachel.
Take care.
Thank you all. Bye.